Hello and welcome to the Edge of Search podcast. I am your host, Shona V. I am the co-founder of Edge of Search Conference, and I am also the head of community and field marketing at Firewire Digital. So today we are talking with one of our 2025 sponsors, and he's been so kind to come back and sponsor us again in 2026. He is the one who's going to be responsible for our incredibly sick after party. So welcome, James Congdon. He is the director of WithFrontier. Thank you so much for your support of Edge of Search and also for sharing your time with me today.
Thanks for having me. So I'm James, founder of WithFrontier. I'm actually a former SEO who accidentally fell into recruitment, really. Spent 12 and a half years as an SEO and performance marketer. My route in was pretty classic, really. I wanted to be a journalist. I had no idea what that actually meant. Kind of went down this rabbit hole of finding journalist roles, realized they didn't exist. This was 2008 as well. So there's obviously a bit of a global crash going on, particularly Europe and US. But the roles I kept seeing coming up consistently were content. I had no idea what that even meant. But anyway, long and short is I found myself at an online pharmacy as a content writer. And that gradually but surely led to SEO, really. I think a lot of what I was doing, albeit extremely primitive, was all SEO focused, really. But we're talking like, this is as far back as keyword density, and there were tools that you'd use to make sure you've included the keyword.
SEO Quake.
SEO Quake. We're talking Squidoo days. We're talking easy, like directories. But that's kind of how I cut my teeth, really. So that was in-house. And then I pursued an agency career, so more generalized SEO roles, until eventually I was at one particular agency and basically realized that nobody was doing anything particularly clever from a link building perspective. There was a lot of link buying going on, a little bit of guest posting, if you want to call it that. We had access to all these tools, classic agency land, had signed up to all these PR database tools, and no one was using them. So I just dabbled. And to be honest, the cool kids call it digital PR today, rightly so. But it was early days, digital PR really is kind of what I found, came across. This was probably like 2012-ish. Did pretty well with that, kind of started to help build out a mini service line that wasn't really formalized. But then I kind of started a bit of an illicit side business, really. Started to reach out to agencies, kind of saying what I was doing. I'm not pretending for a second it was the sophisticated campaigns that you see today. We're talking like figuring out what a journalist would want from a data perspective and feeding it in one by one, not really like sort of all-encompassing campaigns. And that's a bold claim. People in the certain people in the UK will come for me for that, but there weren't many people doing it at that time anyway. Ended up meeting a lady called Lisa Myers at the time, now Lisa Pash, founder of Search in London. She reached out and kind of said, look, this is where I'm looking to head with the agency, with what you're doing. Kind of joined as an early employee, really, and helped kind of build out that service line, that department. But off the back of that, that's where the recruitment kicked in. We needed to build a team, and recruiters, look, this isn't to knock recruiters at the time, but I just literally could not find a recruiter that seemed to understand the nuances, and it was problematic. So in the end, I thought, you know what, rather than moan, rather than be that guy that's going to sit there and say, this is my bottleneck, I just thought, right, I'm just going to crack on. So I started to kind of work out the right kind of formulas of people, because again, there weren't ready-made profiles. There was only a couple of agencies doing this. They were pretty cloak and dagger as to who their team was. And headhunting wasn't really an option. So kind of looked at the various profiles. And I think we worked, for example, looking at ex-journalists, kind of worked and kind of didn't, because I always found that somebody that had been a journalist for a long time were pretty fixated in their ways, didn't necessarily. But what we did find was journalist grads. So they might not necessarily have got into the industry yet, kind of bringing them in, training them up. And some of those people, to be honest with you, that came in the early days are now kind of big names within the digital PR space in the UK. That was kind of where the recruitment kicked in. And it was, I think this is just me and how I operate. It was kind of the next thing for me. I kind of done the digital PR thing. I'd got to a certain point. I've never been afraid to concede that I wasn't the best at that point. You know, we'd hired people in that were super smart and they got themselves up to speed and more, right? So it's kind of like, well, this is brilliant. I realized I was pretty good at it because I knew what good looked like. Another illicit side business formed, if I'm honest. This kind of went on, this bubbled away for maybe probably 2 or 3 years before it was eventually a business. I launched the business. I decided this is what I want to do. That was my next chapter. So that was probably like 2022. And I haven't really looked back since.
I think it was a couple of things that you said that stood out to me there about, it was hard to headhunt people because, agencies are so cloak and dagger about who worked for them and things like that. And it's like, it feels almost the opposite now.
Yeah,
Like you've got
yeah,
agencies that are like, you've got employees that are personal branding themselves to put themselves out there, and it's part of the promotion of the agency in a way.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, so I think
yeah.
that's such an interesting difference. So you've spent over a decade actually doing SEO, actually working in performance marketing, digital PR, before pivoting to recruitment. So, how much does the practitioner background change the way that you recruit compared to like a traditional recruiter? And what do you see that they miss?
I think, and I'll use this word a lot, but I think I'm able to see the nuance, right? So yes, you've got the top line skill set, you've got the top line titles, which again, this isn't to knock traditional recruiters, but I do think it's a problem within recruitment that people will throw as many people with a certain job title at a role and see what sticks. I go beyond that. Sometimes I deliberately blinker myself to the job title and I'm looking at the way they represent themselves from like an achievement perspective. So of course you're limited to people that go to those lengths to put their like the minutiae of what they do on a day to day on their LinkedIn. If it's not there, then obviously I can weed that out in conversation. But yeah, it's that nuance, right? So you might get somebody that says, "I've got 15 years experience as an SEO," right? And that tells me nothing. Like, okay, 15 years. Are you somebody that specializes to tech and on site, and is that your bag, or you're more generalized without wanting to play it down SEO? That can have quality conversations, but not necessarily as hands on? Are you somebody that specializes in platforms? So, whether that be Shopify, old school Magento, headless from an e-com perspective. Are you somebody that's very SaaS focused? You can weed that out. Of course, if it's there and it's signposted and they've been at particular businesses, of course that makes it a lot easier. But some people are at agencies where, you don't know what type of clients they're working with. So it sounds really obvious, but ultimately I can suss out whether someone would be suited to a particular role, particular agency culture, particular client set based on what they've done versus just their titles. And again, someone might tell me, look, I've managed a team of 15 and I've led them to this, and that's fantastic. But ultimately, how did you go about that? How much of that was you versus that, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that nuance. And I'm able to have the conversation in a way that disarms them, for want of a better way of putting it, because understandably, people can get their back up to recruiters, particularly if they feel like they're not really going to understand the weeds of what they go into. So, yeah, I would say that's the fundamental
Yeah.
difference.
And I feel like you can talk to them on their level at that time. And so, like, that kind of brings a bit of an ease to it as well, because you can just talk if you actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
And
100,
that's good
100.
filter, I think.
Yeah, I think the other thing as well is I'll get candidates reaching out to me on WhatsApp. I mean, I might get 5 or 6 a week that will say, look, I'm not officially looking, but tell me what you know of, or this is what I'm struggling with in my current agency. These are the reasons it's not working for me, or brand, wherever they are. And I think a good proportion is now the fact that I've been doing this, recruitment for nearly 5.5, 6 years. But prior to that, I've worked in different types of agencies. So I can kind of think off the cuff what agency would suit this individual. And I'm able, I think, being within the space, so to speak, and sponsoring a lot of communities and speaking for communities, events and whatnot, I'm then able to reach out to people and say, hey, look, I know you might not unofficially be looking for this type of person, but what's the chances? And I do create a fair few opportunities that way as well, which again, some recruiters will listen to that and go, well, obviously that's bread and butter. But what I'm trying to say is it's that access. It's that access to
Yeah.
specialist agencies that, unless they've got a really good relationship with the recruiter, they're not just gonna take a quick WhatsApp about a candidate. So
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. And you mentioned a little bit about sponsorship there and supporting communities. So let's have a quick chat on why we're doing this episode. So, With
Yeah.
Frontier is one of our sponsors for Edge of Search this year. What was it about this event that made it feel like the right fit for you?
I think for me, and I've said this a lot lately, I think I said it in a post yesterday, like community is everything. Like you can't claim to be a specialist in any area unless you're entrenched within the communities. And so I'm always looking out for, yeah, ultimately communities that are truly at the forefront. And I think I came across you and we were back and forth. And what I did notice about Edge of Search is you're intentionally and actually are at the forefront of modern search with regards to what you want to be discussing, right? And that sounds like something I've just chat GPT, but ultimately you are, but you're not the type of community and event that's trying to position themselves as being the experts in that area. You're pulling in the right people, right? So you're engaging people in the UK that are top of their game now from a digital PR perspective. Shout out to kind of Ashley, Deviation Buyers.
Yeah.
I actually saw him at an event the other day. Really, really good guy. Um, he'll be there. And I think that's literally, they're top of their game right now. So you're looking at that. And I think for me, that's everything. I think communities should do one of a few things or all. It's education, to provide access to opportunities. Um, and ultimately it's to bring people together that might otherwise not feel heard. And I think, for example, the digital PR side of things that you're going to be pushing with the event, there are so many people that I speak to. We'll get into this later, I'm sure, but that are very frustrated right now that they can't get their clients on board with digital PR. They can't get their boss on board with digital PR. They can't. They're blue in the face. So yeah, it's things like that that I spotted in Edge of Search that I wanted to be part of that. So I tried my luck, and here we are.
Yeah, I actually did have someone tell me the other day, and this is the thing that I love the most about it, is the collaborations that come out of it. So there was she's a social media content creator and does a lot of like photography, does a lot of design, and she ended up connecting with a website designer at one of our events, and they sort of like didn't really touch base for like a year. But when they did, she was like, I just felt like organic. It felt normal. And just, we got into, this big project together. And it's just like, I thought it would be weird reaching out to her, but she was just like so happy. It's just like, that's the connection that you're fostering, is like, it's a genuine like need getting people to work together. Um, so I was like, oh, that's sweet. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's exactly it. Yeah, it does. It connects people and it connects like-minded people. And a lot of people in the industry complain that they're not given the right opportunities. They're not kind of given access to the right training. Well, this, exactly what you're doing is going to give them that. So yeah, ultimately, that's why I wanted to be part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So buy your ticket to Edge of Search.
Yeah.
So you are also actively building your presence in the Australian market. What does sponsoring events contribute to how you're building your presence here?
I think it adds to the credibility, right? Like it's easy for someone to say I'm an ex-marketer turned recruiter, right? But you've got to, well, in addition to knowledge sharing, it's walking the walk as well, and being part of these communities. And I think, particularly in Australia, I've noticed there aren't as many. There are a lot of general marketing communities, but there aren't that many specialists. So, of course, when I find one like yourself, and obviously Georgia over at Switchkey's got one as well, um, then yeah, ultimately it's a no brainer for me, and it's an educational piece for myself too. Right? I've got to be cognizant of the fact that I'm not hands on performance marketer anymore. So therefore, for me to truly remain current, I want to be part of these communities and be constantly learning as well as giving. So that's a primary motivator as well. Because again, I don't think anyone can truly claim to be a specialist recruiter unless you really and truly are finger on the pulse. I think, yeah, you get great recruiters that can find people and they can source anyone, but do you truly know what good looks like beyond just throwing as many as you possibly can? I don't believe so. So yeah, that is my main driver.
And you're making a real move into Australia, actually an actual move to
Yeah.
Australia. What
Yeah.
prompted that decision?
Do you know what? So I've always romanticized it, uh, but I never knew anything about it. So went out there, absolutely loved it. I mean, listen, it helps that your weather's a lot better, right? And it's funny actually because we were moaning. I was moaning 10 minutes 10 minutes ago off camera about the fact we've got a heat wave at the moment in London, but we're just not built for it here. But yeah, I mean, look, the weather helps, but in all seriousness, beyond that, I think there's a real opportunity in the market. I really believe that. I think there's so many smart individuals, so many smart agency founders, so many smart marketers, but it's almost like a lot of them have accepted the status quo. They've kind of said, you know what, like, I'm tired of trying to educate. Um, I see that as a challenge. And it was the same in the UK. Look, don't get me wrong. I think there are a lot of people within the UK market, sorry to say this, and US, that are holier than thou, and they will claim that they've always been at the forefront. They've always been X, Y, Z, but it took time. It took a lot of education. And I think once, which again feeds into, I know I'm going back to a previous question, but that feeds into the importance of communities and events like yourself. You're educating the market. And it's only once you've done that, that all of a sudden clients wake up and say, okay, all right, this is the importance of, and this is how I'm going to justify the budget. So yeah, I see it as a challenge. Um, so yeah, pretty excited about it. Sun definitely helps though, to be fair.
You wait till you've been here for a little while, then you'll be like, okay, it is in fact too much sun.
Yeah, pretty sure that.
Um, so you've placed people in the UK, US, Australia, and Dubai as well. So how does the Australian search and digital marketing job market compare to those? And what's structurally different about how, I guess, agencies and brand tend to hire here in Oz?
Yeah. So really good question. I think, do you know what? If I was to think of a word that encapsulates its scale, right? I don't see as many agencies. That's changing slowly and more are cropping up, but there's not. I mean, look, in the UK, the US, there are dozens upon dozens upon dozens of agencies looking to scale from day one. That's kind of their vision, and therefore they recruit. With that in mind, right? I think that is less prevalent in Australia. I think a lot of the roles that I take on, a lot of the roles that I see are replacement hires or maybe like the first growth hire in 8 to 10 months to a year, right? So I think that I would say is the first observation. The other, and again, I'm really conscious to say I don't want to knock an entire industry because it's not the case. And I work with some really cool independent agencies that are not of this thinking, but there are a lot of agencies in Oz that they either accept the status quo of, they may make statements like SEOs are never going to be commercially minded or client facing because it's a different skill set. Or if they are, they're tough to find, they're too expensive, et cetera, et cetera. So therefore that's reflected in the type of roles, right? So I see a lot of account management roles crop up for agencies. And like when clients reach out to me for support with those roles, part of me is like, I'm conflicted because I mean, bold statement. I know people will come for me, but, and it used to be the case in the UK, don't get me wrong. We did have an account management layer, but I do believe in a lot of cases it's a fallacy because I think clients are now becoming more and more demanding in wanting to speak to and deal with on a regular basis the person that's doing the work, right? Beyond that, I believe that the best SEOs, I know this is a rhetoric, I get it, but the best SEOs are commercially minded, not just so they can communicate commercials to the client, but why they're doing what they're doing beyond the fact it's cool and they're super smart and they can do cool things because they're so smart, right? And this is UK, this is US, this is Dubai, this is Europe, this is worldwide. The best SEOs can think commercially, right? So yes, they can put together the most intricate audit for sure, but that's just 101, right? Beyond that, they need to look at the activity and work out what's actually going to hit the bottom line. And then the secondary step, which is this client piece, is downloading from the client the restrictions internally, the strengths, the weaknesses, the lack of resource, the internal politics, take all of that into account and be able to then prioritize activity. Because otherwise, you're just selling a sheet of paper that says you should do these 30 things. You either do it or you don't. See ya. So I would say, ultimately, to go back to your question, that's the key difference. There's an acceptance that that's tough to recruit for. And they're right, by the way. Like somebody that's like in like helping to find these individuals, like they are totally right. But there are also 3 or 4 agencies that I work with that are addressing this now. So they're like kind of forming mini academies internally where they're making sure for consistently every single week, they're talking to them about the P&L of the agency. They're talking to them about the P&L of each account rather than relying on account directors, account managers to kind of speak to that because there's just a disjoint in my opinion. So sorry, huge tangent there, but I'm quite passionate about it. That's the first thing. I think the other difference beyond scale and that side of things, it's when it comes to our good friend Geo, AEO, whatever we want to be calling it today, right?
Yeah.
Feel like, and again, I want to be clear that there are agencies out there, and I'm working with some of them that are genuinely at the forefront, right? But there are also agencies that use it as a buzzword, and like I speak to them and I'll say, I want people to be that have done things from a geo perspective. But when you dig into that, you're like, well, okay, but what does that look like to you? They don't really know. I think it's more just it's just something to put on the job description. There's a bit more of that in Oz than there is within the UK, US. Why? But again, not. I really don't want to knock that entire industry, right? Because there are some awesome agencies that are on that. And I think, I think beyond that, salaries can be disproportionate. I think it used to be the case that within the UK that the larger media agencies, without obviously naming them, would pay that little bit more. But there was just this understanding that it was just a very different type of work. And, you are going to be a client manager and a stakeholder manager with a lovely title and you get paid that little bit more, but you're probably not as hands-on as you used to be, right? And actually, I still think some of the specialist agencies aren't paying enough for what they're actually looking for. And I'm not saying that that's exclusive to what I think that still happens to a degree in the UK. The US, less so. I think they're starting to pay a lot more. I'd say the other key difference is there are less senior hires, right? And that was the same within the UK. I would say comparatively to the UK and the US. But that said, I think there are things at play there. I think the UK went all in on getting, in a lot of cases, went all in on getting rid of senior layers, replacing with workflows. Of course, they realized quite quickly that leadership was lacking, commercial ability was lacking, stakeholder ability was lacking, and also just a smart human to make sure that what they're doing just wasn't off the boil. So there's a bit of a correction going on in the UK and the US where senior hires are coming back with really good salaries. So I would say I'm not seeing that as much in Oz. But again, kind of feeding into what I was saying earlier about I'm excited by the challenges. And I don't think people would be afraid to say this. I think Oz is slightly behind, but it will come around in the same way. So I do think that that's going to happen. But yeah, I would say those are the core differences. And then, of course, there's the obvious digital PR. We mentioned it a few times now. They're just few and far between. I'm working with 3 or 4 agencies that are taking that seriously, and we're looking at we're looking at that right now. Of course, there's a huge talent shortage because it's not been a discipline yet. But of course, that was where I cut my teeth in the UK, so that can be got round, and I believe that. But it is, it's extremely early days compared to the UK and the US. A lot of roles in the UK, a lot in the US, to the point where I've spoken to 3 or 4 people from the UK that have moved out with the naive expectation that they were just going to walk into a role because they're from the UK and they've been at quality agencies, and they're now contemplating going home because there's
Wow.
just not the opportunities. And I think they're having conversations, and agencies are super curious and they're loving the fact they're from the UK. But when push comes to shove, I think unless these people are senior enough to be able to sell it for them and build out the actual proposition, etc., it's the conversations are going nowhere. So those are the key differences, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, look, and so much of what you said, it's come up in the conversations I've had with pretty much every speaker I've had on this so far. A big point that comes up is being commercially minded. So being able to talk to what are the business goals, how can you bring it all back to revenue and sales, and because I think, SEO appeals to a very particular kind of person, people who like a lot of diversity, who like a lot of having a lot of different things to work on. Because SEO, when you really do it, it's like having a finger in every pie. You can touch on every aspect of a business's digital entity. And so, it's easy to get carried away with being like all these little things you can do that incrementally might move something, but they ultimately, you can't really attribute them to, well, this
Yeah,
made us a sale. And
yeah,
they
yeah,
struggle with that, but because they're like, but this is the best practice. And it's like, Yeah, but no one cares.
Yeah. And it's industry nuance, right? There's so
Yeah.
many things. There's internal politics where, and again, I'm not saying this doesn't. I'm guaranteed this happens in Oz, but I think just from my experience in UK and the US, and even going back to trying to launch digital PR within the UK, and not just myself, agencies that were trying to do it, the biggest thing they came up against was traditional PR being extremely protective, and they came from a place of power at that time. You know, they'd been the main channel, they'd been the one where all the budget had been thrown. They'd been, I don't want to say less accountable KPI wise, but yeah, probably still are. But yeah, I believe these things can be overcome, and
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, that's where I come from. It.
Yeah. And what's your honest read, I guess, on the maturity of the Australian search marketing industry right now? So you've mentioned a few times, we're maybe a bit behind where the UK and the US are at in terms of operation. Um, but what's that ceiling we're bumping up against?
It's not for want of smart individuals, right? I think the Oz market is full of so many smart individuals, agencies that I work with, founders. But I think it's definitely less mature than the UK and the US. I think there's more to be done, and there's more to be seen from that market. But I think that's changing. I think LinkedIn, love it or hate it, I think LinkedIn visibility of UK and US agencies and the all-encompassing events are changing that. You're seeing like the awesome Maleda heading over to Australia, just sort of popping over, and you're doing it yourself, like you're bringing the lights of deviation across to events. So I think that will change. But yeah, right now I do believe that it's a lot less mature. And I mentioned it earlier, with regards to Geo and AEO, there are agencies that are on it. There are even agencies that are going all in and saying that they're specializing on it. But there's a big bulk of agencies that don't really know and haven't done anything yet with it, but they put it on their website. They put it on their job descriptions, and they're not entirely sure where that's going yet. Whereas I think the UK and the US, it's not been cracked. No one's cracked it. But I think there's a lot more going on with regards to experimentation as well. And I think, again, it's just more of the acceptance of status quo as a whole. I think there are so many service businesses that have got very healthy budgets and are throwing relatively healthy amounts of money at SEO that would be right for digital PR from a thought leadership perspective, from a expert commentary perspective, and whatnot. And yeah, I think it's just opening the mind a little bit more to the overall benefits of that as a channel. But then if we're to look at other kind of channels like paid media or SEO, again, what I find a lot is that agencies within Oz are just looking for good functional individuals, someone that can deliver. If they can have a conversation with a client, happy days. But there's not necessarily much challenge with regards to how much AI they use it to complement their job.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to that, I think on the GEO front, I think in most cases that I see it, it's really, again, I've seen very few people really going deep on specifically GEO. And in most cases, what I'm seeing is a rebrand of SEO, because for the longest time, all you could get budgets for as an SEO was blogs and a
Yeah.
website audit, and
Yeah.
maybe that was it. And so now people are like, oh my God, this is my chance to get all the stuff I wanted to do done, and I'm just going to call it GEO.
Yeah, which I get. To be honest, I get it, and I guess that's happened since day dot, right? I think
Yeah.
there was an element of that with regards to things like content marketing, content strategy, as well. And yeah, I just see it as an evolution. There are subtle shifts. It's not changed the world with regards to tactics and strategy, but I think there's enough difference there to breathe a bit of excitement. Uh, into the industry, which is how I see it, which it blows my mind when you see the back and forth wars going on LinkedIn and whatnot as to whether it's business as usual. Because like my view is you don't want it to be business as usual anyway. Like surely you want that evolution, and then you get the flip side of people claiming to, oh, we've always done that. Have you? Come
Have you
on,
though?
yeah, come
Well,
on. You still buy links, so yeah, it's
yeah. I mean, my argument tends to be that the things that a lot of people are arguing is GEO. I'm like,
mm,
that's the things you should have always been doing
mm-hmm.
as SEO. And because for me, the misleading thing I think about SEO is this idea that it's a separate skill, because
Yeah. No, it's not. It
it's
isn't.
really not. It's knowing how the digital ecosystem works. How does the machine do the stuff? How does it access? How does it read content? How does it understand it? How does it categorize it? How does it index it? And then like how does it serve it up to people? That's really SEO. And then you just apply it to whatever it is that you do. So like I'm content background. So like that was how I got into SEO, was taking that framework and applying it to how to do copywriting. And that just, it didn't change the actual skills I was using. It changed how I perceived their value and their relevance and what I prioritized. That, kids, is SEO.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Actually, perception is like it's a good way of putting it, really, isn't it? It's just changing your view on it. I think I see where they're coming from in regards to saying like these are things that any good business and marketing team should be doing. So I get that. So like for example, community management, brand consistency, um, PR that ultimately is going to deliver from like a real high quality citation perspective. And none of these things in isolation are going to move the needle. And yeah, there is that argument to say that they should always have been done. But I always come at it, and I think maybe it's just working in various agencies, speaking to various clients. I don't believe that was always the case. I think particularly in the UK, I'll speak to the UK on it. There was, let's take creative link building, digital PR again. But I think there was a fixation for a long, long time of like, let's just get a link from Forbes. The homepage will do. Let's just get that link. And you're like, okay, and I was guilty of that. So I'm not going to be holier than thou. Like we did do it and we celebrate it. Or if we get the BBC in the UK, like, you're like, wow, got the BBC. You're like, okay, what page? It's a homepage. Okay. So yeah, I think it's just that when people sort of say we've always done it, it's like, yeah, I know. I think what they're truly saying is we've always known that those are the fundamentals, and I get it, and they were. But I do think just like any channel, people tend to deviate and chase the money or chase the shiny or chase. So now
Yeah.
it's an incentive not to. Yeah.
And chase trends too.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember a time where everyone was swearing by one-page scroller websites,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which just an absolute nightmare. Or people were swearing by, 200-word blogs. Yeah,
Yeah.
just nightmare times. I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I remember that was literally my job at one point, like deliver blogs that would ultimately, and then you'd kind of submit them to things like Squidoo, I don't remember that, or like eZine, or and then you basically just throw in content you spent hours on into the ether. Like you don't know where it goes in the end. No one's actually measuring the impact.
Yes, we will talk a little bit about digital PR, but first, a little bit more on recruitment. So there's often a gap between what a job ad says and what a hiring manager actually cares about.
Yeah.
What's the real list? Like the things that genuinely move candidates to the top of the pile.
I think, and it's going to link back to a lot of what I've already said. I think what really moves them to the top of the pile is, yeah, definitely that hands-on channel ability and knowledge and the ability to deliver. But I think more than ever, even at a senior level with a pretty decent salary, people are, or certainly the ideal is that people are hands-on with delivery and strategy in equal measures. So, I think for a long time there were roles, senior roles, particularly within larger agencies, where you just deliver the strategy, chuck it across, move on, never think about it again. I think now more than ever, people need to be hands on. Then also, there's the commercial piece we were talking about. It really is that. And now more than ever, I advise people to put numbers on their CV. So monetary numbers, not just traffic rankings, right? I'm not saying that's always possible, but I think where it is, for the senior roles, yeah, that ultimately, or if not, it's the ability to say why you did what you did, what it achieves, and ultimately outcomes. Is outcomes. That's the word I'm searching for. It's outcomes, right? It's
Yes.
not monetary, it's outcomes. So that is now on the wish list. And if it's agency side, it's client ability. I think and even at a junior level now, don't get me wrong. I think if someone was sharp enough, smart enough, can deliver, then that's overlooked. But generally speaking, I think even at a junior level now, there's an expectation to be client facing, because again, it feeds into that client retention piece, because that was always a problem in agency land. It was like, yeah, we can get them through the door, we just can't keep them, but we're doing great work. And it's like, well, it's because no one's communicating it, right? Apart from the founder, and that only goes so far. And I think, yeah, beyond that, it's the curiosity. I think curiosity goes a long way now. I think builders go a long way. And by that, what I mean is, and it's going to sound obvious, and I know it's a bit of a rhetoric within SEO, but somebody that's got examples of experimentation, things that they've kind of and in order to disprove or prove their hypothesis, whatever that might be, that just goes a long way. In addition to that, we just mentioned it a few times. It's, GEO and AEO, curiosity in the very least. If they've got examples of where they've been putting together strategy and can rationalize why. And I mean, when I say that, I mean it's beyond saying, "Have you tried Reddit?" Because that's quite cool. Have you tried
Yeah,
data
Red
led?
is so cool.
Have you tried data-led studies? Because they're great. Just that it's that kind of conversation that a founder will have will switch them off right now. It's almost better not to say it. It's almost better to just say, like, I've not really touched upon it yet. So I would say those are the wish lists, and it's not reinventing the wheel. I think people over time have probably always wanted that, but more than ever, when margins are squeezed, particularly in the UK, I think the cost of employing someone is through the roof. It's kind of like, it's that extra that they're going to want. Beyond that, right? I think people that are really valuable right now are commercial from a account growth perspective. So very good with upsell, can really lead new business efforts, because for a long time that was seen as the sales team job or the founder's job. And something else I see a lot in Oz are agencies looking for salespeople that might not have had any industry experience whatsoever, just as long as they've got great sales experience. Not great. I'm not saying, again, not every agency, but it's something I'm seeing as a team. Whereas now, particularly in the UK and the US, people that have that ability to sell, as well as being a hands-on practitioner, they are, they're worth their weight in their salary, right? So yeah, pretty long list. And don't get me wrong, it's a wish list, right? It's like everything,
Yeah.
I'm saying that these people are really out there. Well, they are, but they're pretty expensive. But yeah, I would say that those are what people are looking for primarily at the moment.
Yeah. So, mid-career, looking to move into a senior role, really focus on the commercialization
Yeah,
aspect,
yeah,
learning how to be a people person, because
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
struggle in our industry.
yeah. I agree. And you know what, right? Something I always say, and I've said this on a couple of podcasts, and I've written about it. I was not easy to work with in the early days because I was very tunnel focused on my own goal, whatever that might be, right? And it held me back. It did hold me back. I didn't see it until kind of the middle of my career. So yeah, I think being easy to work with, I think, particularly in an age where a lot of agencies are hybrid or remote. And actually, just going back to this, I mentioned it before, but like being sort of AI curious, I think I had a chat with the founder the other day, and we're talking about a digital PR role in the UK. Um, Pretty run of the mill, middleweight role. And I think something they're looking for is somebody, for example, that's dabbling and building things within Claude, for example. So like client reports and things to drive efficiency. So maybe that's an operative word. I think people are looking for candidates that can help drive efficiency within an agency. They're kind of waking up now to the fact that that's not all on their shoulders. If they can actually employ people that are operationally minded as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
that is the wish list.
Awesome. And for agency leaders or in-house marketing directors, if they're listening to this, what separates the teams that retain good people from the ones that just keep hemorrhaging talent?
I would say just constantly creating opportunity and open conversations. And it sounds so obvious. It
Yeah.
does sound so obvious, but I've been part of agencies that, the door was closed, the blinds were down when they were talking commercials, or when they were even talking about new client wins, it was like, oh, they don't need to know. They don't need to. So anyway, I think open conversations is everything, and opportunities like the I've been very fortunate in my career as a marketer where opportunities were created or sort of requested them and sort of pitched them in. For example, I was a hands-on digital PR that wanted to do more of the commercial and recruitment. So again, once the team was built, moved into that. Prior to that, going way back, I was content specialist, curious about SEOs. So it's that. I think the agencies that are doing well right now, they're retaining their staff, they're maintaining that loyalty. It's that openness and opportunity and freedom as well. A lot of people think retention are team days, get them out for beers as much as we can. I mean, don't get me wrong, agencies that do that, but it's not about that. It's trust, 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 I would
Yes.
say.
Yeah, look, and I would 100% agree with that. I never really saw myself as a person who would be like loyal to a business before I was at Firewire. And 100% it comes down to everything you just said. It's open conversation, like building the business in partnership with everyone who works there. Um, like making space for opportunities. Like I'm doing Edge of Search because I was, kind of crazy enough to go to my boss and be like, so I'm thinking about doing this. And he threw his hat in the ring to support it and make it happen. Like I didn't ask him to do that. He gave me the time on work hours to organize and threw money into it. And now it's a whole thing. And yeah, as a fully remote company, like trust is so key. And it's very, very obvious when there's people who aren't contributing to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And it's always a bit of a flag to me when I kind of speak to founders, and even if they're remote, so they are remote and they've structured themselves that way where you can tell the trust isn't there. So yeah, I think trust is everything. I was very fortunate. I really, really was, um, to have that and almost like create my own roles really in many ways. I'm not saying that's always possible. It's not, but I think just that trust and to hear people out, right? This feeling of this is how we do it, or no, this is how we've got so far. So why, there's a bit of that. I heard that recently with someone I work with that kind of turned around and their dream role turned into not so much of a dream role because ultimately they just didn't feel like there was room for them to bring change. Right. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What is the biggest hiring mistake you see Australian agencies specifically making, and what's the fix, do you think? I think I already know the answer to this, but go ahead.
I think do you know what? There's a couple, but I think one of the biggest mistakes I see and have seen very, very recently are people that they so firstly they fixate on the budget, right? So they're not necessarily prepared to pay for what they're looking for. And I think that's a huge mistake because you pay cheap, you pay twice. But beyond that, I think it's taking people on that are not necessarily specialists in any one particular area and then just expecting them to be. So I had one particular agency that had made 3 or 4 hires into the same role and then came to me and said, look, nobody's stepping up. And then you look at who they had in those seats and none of them had the background. So they were an agency that were very e-commerce specific. They worked with challenger brands, minimal red tape, but kind of a lot of founder conversations going on. The founders are very visible within these brands. And some of these people had worked in-house for random B2B businesses and etc. So I'll say those are the two biggest mistakes. And I'm sure people will see multiple others. And when I'm over there, when I'm over there properly, I'll see more. But this is what I've been exposed to recently. Well, what would you say? Like, what are you seeing that you've been part of or that you've seen?
The biggest mistake I've seen, I think, is there's just such a lack of understanding about digital generally.
Yeah.
And so they kind of, what happens is you go into roles and you just tend, like the most competent person tends to just be given the most work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one place that I worked at in-house, I was there to help on the website. So the SEO part was my job. And ultimately it ended up just being me, just working on a website. There was like a database of like 9,000 products that I was trying to manage. There was a newsletter. I was doing social media. I was organizing events. I was running and photographing and hosting those events and, um, you know, trying to do all the reporting and trying to educate people. And on top of that was also like down in the warehouse, like shipping things.
Yeah.
So it's just one of these things of like competence becomes a deficit for you. And people sort of see SEOs as this like magical cure-all role that you can just kind of every business has their own idea of what an SEO should be. So it's really, really hard to have movement, like a linear kind of movement in your career, because you're always kind of coming up against different criteria for a job you've been doing for maybe like 10 plus years.
Yeah.
Um, so
I,
to me, the biggest mistake is just a lack of understanding.
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense actually. And actually it kind of brings me to something. Um, what I do see a lot actually are these all-encompassing marketing roles where they want people to be doing email, social, they want people to be doing content. There's a lot of that. I mean, I don't necessarily tend to get briefed on those because obviously it's not necessarily my specialism, but you see them crop up. And a few of the recruiters that I speak to out there, they get a lot of those roles and they take them on because they want to take on the work. But it's an absolute headache, and they're never going to be happy when they're looking for that much stuff.
Alrighty, so let's talk digital PR because it's a topic you know inside out. For people who are less familiar, how would you define what digital PR actually is, distinct from like traditional PR or link building?
So, I mean, digital PR, I mean, it's evolved massively over time. So if we're talking sort of 2012, 2013, maybe a bit earlier days, it was a link building activity, but it was a shinier activity. It was securing links, excitement around securing links from top tier media. But over time, and agencies have cropped up and have done such a solid job in evolving that. But ultimately, digital PR is a channel whereby if it's done right, it delivers benefits for multiple channels throughout or multiple points throughout the funnel, really. So there's the obvious link for sure. GEO, AEO is kind of also given rise now to the fact that unlinked mentions are valuable as well. So, that's a current. Then you've got the social value, again, if done right. And I'm not saying it's always been the case and always is the case and always considered, but I think if a piece is, if we're to 101 it, brand relevant, strong from a brand perspective, is going to really kind of help boost brand equity, for want of a better way of putting it. Then there's the social value there as well. Then there's there's also the brand value. But I think a lot of people think about digital PR as an activity whereby you're securing links from journalists, and that's it. That's kind of where their thought process stops. And there was a point, as I mentioned, that was the case. But these days, I think clever, solid strategies, they involve so many different platforms. And again, with the current search landscape, I think digital PRs good digital PRs are thinking like almost like community managers in addition to PRs. So they're delivering content that would not be out of place within niche forums for specific industries, for example. So I'm not talking about the dirty days of comment spam on every forum we can find. I mean, high quality conversation starters slash content that will accompany existing dialogue as well. But then, of course, there's that digital PRs, again, if done right, they're the people that are going to help maintain that brand consistency alongside traditional PR as well, right? So everything they're doing. So yeah, I think in terms of as a channel, as I say, it's a channel that will deliver across multiple touch points, and beyond a link activity now.
In the UK, digital PR has become a bit of a core discipline, and we've touched on that quite a lot, and that it's not really too visible in Australia yet. But why do you think it hasn't taken hold at that same level in Oz?
I think from an ignorant outside point of view, what I originally saw were what I put down to as excuses, right? So a lot of the things that were put forward were budget restriction, understanding, education, lack of talent, which are all valid, by the way. So I think that's a real thing. I think a lot of clients don't buy in and they don't see where the immediate return is going to be. And I don't think a lot of agencies are great at educating them on the overall return, which would appease some of that. So there's a lot of that going on. But I think the talent shortage is another massive one, because a lot of agencies that kind of pop their head up and they want to look into creating a department, there aren't the people in the market that can help them do that. There may be junior individuals that are currently at agencies. And I think there's a bit of no particular agency, but there's a bit of a production line culture going on at the moment with digital PR in Oz that used to take place in the UK, right? So the aim was always to build out a team, they can pump out the work, and then founder or someone from an account management perspective would deal with the commercials and conversations. But what I have observed are certain agencies are doing well at kind of building out small teams to pump out the results, but not necessarily have anyone doing a great job communicating the value, really. So I think those are the things that I'm seeing. And yeah, like anything, lack of budget, lack of financial incentive to do it as a loss leader, is driving that demand down right now. I believe it will change. I think again it goes back to what we were saying before about the UK and the US being more open with what they're doing on LinkedIn, and a lot of events are inspiring. But it's just overcoming that client piece really, and that education side of thing. And I do think there are ways around it. I think what I always advise, and I have advised, and I've made introductions as well, not even necessarily as a direct commercial transaction as a recruiter, whereby there are a few really solid freelancers out there that cut their teeth in the UK, and they're working with the agencies in order to educate from a structure point of view, what the team should look like and what the overall narrative should be with regards to proposition to clients and helping them overcome that, the client side of things. So slowly but surely, there are agencies bubbling away that you'll probably see popping up with a new digital PR offering in the coming months. And that's what I would always advise. I think and there's often pride in that, right? There's often pride that stops that, right? They often think, well, that's not us doing it. You know what I mean? We want to do it. We don't necessarily want to get lots in to get us into the right place, but those are the agencies that I think are going to be able to do it. And that's what I'd always advise. You get someone in and they will come from a point of view where they've been there, been there, they've done it, they've made the mistakes, they've built out the structures and teams within the UK, and can help them replicate.
Yeah, I think there's also this maybe a missing skill here. So I originally started off doing a communications degree, and you've probably learned a lot of these skills too with a background in journalism. But when you're talking about or learning about journalism, there's key things they teach you about how to recognize, what makes something worth putting out to people, what's worth communicating. Is it timely? Is it interesting? Is it, how does it impact people? How does it, affect them emotionally? And so I think maybe there's like this, maybe a little bit of a skills deficit on the communication front.
Yeah.
SEOs are very good at understanding something from an entity perspective. What is the thing? What does it do? Who would use it? What is its purposes? But none of that translates into a timely news piece. None of that translates into an interest story that you can communicate to a wider audience. So I think we haven't quite bridged the gap on the communications front.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, and again, the UK has seen a very similar evolution. Now it's got to the point where people see it and people are actively calling it a performance channel. Because ultimately it can be if it's tied in with all the right channels, which is always a struggle in the beginning, and that's kind of got to a mature place. So that's how I'd always position it. It is a channel which, yes, it was born out of SEO, and yes, it appeases need for backlink acquisition, but beyond that, it's that brand consistency piece. It's easy to say, it's not always achievable, but if working in harmony with traditional PR, then ultimately there's that side of things, there's that social value. And then it's content as well. Like, I think, again, it wasn't always the case. A lot of content was produced in silo for digital PR. Now it's the case that certain content works for on-site engagement as much as it works for offline page link acquisition and citations and thought leadership, brand positioning, etc., etc. There's that mindset now, and you just need somebody, again, easy to say, but somebody that can package all of that together and really kind of sell that dream. Because actually, if you think about it, it is a CMO's dream to have all of that in one channel. But yeah, it's a tough one. It's easy for me to say, isn't it, right?
Yes, but from everything you've said, it sounds like any Australian agencies out there looking to build digital PR capability, there's a skill gap there, and so really it is worth your time to bring somebody into the fold who has
100.
that skill gap.
Yeah, 100%. And it's going to sound ridiculous, but I'd be more than happy to make introductions, like non-transactional just introductions, because I guess it's part of the wider mission, right? To for the industry to mature out there that little bit more. So, and like I say, there are 3 or 4 really solid freelancers out there that, don't get me wrong, they're busy, and you will see some of these agencies start to crop up with their offerings and having invested their time with these people. But that's what I would always say, and just be open-minded, allow them to kind of help position things commercially, structure wise, get stuck into delivery initially. Don't get me wrong, because you're going to need somebody delivering. Then you're at a point all of a sudden that you've got that breathing space to start to build out that small team. And probably always that shiny thing syndrome as well. But looking at where the UK is and how big some of those teams are, I'm thinking, that's a mountain too steep. But it doesn't need to be that. It's just you build up smaller teams and grow sustainably. But again, what I want to say is, listen, I've never owned an agency, so I definitely don't want to be coming across as holier than thou. This is just what I'm seeing from what I have seen in the UK.
Yeah. And if you were advising a search professional, an SEO who wanted to move into digital PR, what would you tell them to learn, or where would you tell them to start to make that pivot?
I think there are a whole host now of decent, solid educational podcasts out there now, largely coming from the UK. So PropellerNet, for example, a lady called Louise, awesome, known her for years, heads up a team over at PropellerNet, which is an agency in Brighton, just on the coast. Really solid podcast. I think, look, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I can give them a whole list of people to follow in order to really kind of learn, because I think the UK is very, very good at sharing knowledge. As well, there are events as well, again, UK based, so it's not exactly easy just to pop over, but what they do is they stream these events. They do stream them, they do sell the videos, like the Digital PR Summit run by Digital Loft, a guy called James Congdon, again, known for years. So it's that, I think, and also just the publications like Moz, Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal, they have their own solid digital PR categories these days. So learn the fundamentals, learn the ability, I would say, develop the ability, almost treat yourself as a client if you wanted to lock yourself in a room and just speak out loud, but you want to be able to position it to yourself. You want to be able to sell it convincingly. And I'm not talking about selling it just for direct entry, but it's being able to accurately describe it, and then that begin there. What I would say again is reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out to people in the industry as well. I think there are a whole host of really solid digital PRs in the UK and the US that are happy to have calls with people and train as well. And again, I can give people a list of proper solid trainers and run their own kind of online seminars as well. So yeah, it's that. I know it sounds like a cop out. I know it sounds like an obvious answer, but there is a whole host of info out there now that just wasn't available back in the day. So it is easier than ever to learn the fundamentals, and then you're in a position as well to start speaking internally about how you see the value and how you would like to take it on. Because ultimately, that's what I did initially. I kind of took it on and positioned it in a way, where I saw the value of it.
All right. Final questions. We're wrapping up. What roles do you think are going to be in serious demand in the Australian market over the next, say, 2 to 3 years that aren't yet on most people's radar?
I think we're going to see a lot more GEO and AEO focused roles. We are, irrespective of what people are saying right now with regards to resisting it. We just are. I'm not saying that we're these standalone roles. I'm going to see more SEO roles are going to start to encompass way more of it. I'm going to continue to say, I do think we're going to see more digital PR, but beyond that, I think they're cropping up already. So they do exist, but we're going to see a lot more growth focused roles, or heads of growth, director of growth, as opposed to traditional heads of marketing, heads of digital that previously would have been responsible for budgets, budget allocation, team, and managing a portfolio of agencies. Now, I'm not saying those roles are going to be eradicated, but I think more than ever, as budgets are squeezed, things get tighter, people are cottoning on to the fact that you can still find people at a very senior level that are hands-on with one particular channel, savvy enough to pull in the right resource for the other channels. So, for example, and this has been prevalent in the UK for a few years now, increasingly in the US, I am taking on roles where the title might be growth director, but ultimately it could be someone from a paid media background, an SEO background. They're going to take on that one particular channel, but they're also going to be responsible for parts of the rest of the funnel. So CRM, for example, organic social, and pull in the right resource for that. So effectively, we're definitely going to see a lot more of that. I also believe, having spoken to agencies, we're going to see a lot more channel savvy, or certainly demand, whether or not the pool's going to be big enough, but I think there's going to be demand for channel savvy salespeople. So people that have come from a channel, they've cut their teeth, they've worked their way through as a hands-on channel specialist, but found a particular passion for account upsell, new business leadership, RFP formation, whatever it might be. All of a sudden, and it's happening in the UK and has happened in the UK for a few years now and is still in short supply. These people are starting to command a lot higher salaries than they ever would have done as a hands-on channel specialist. I'm already in talks with a couple of agencies that are inquisitive about that type of person. They don't believe they exist. And I would be inclined to agree with them, generally, but there are people in us. But beyond that, there are a lot of people that want to kind of move to us. That would be good from that perspective. But I'm already seeing those roles cropping up for sure. There'll be a lot more creative leadership roles where their responsibility will be overseeing, of course, paid social, paid media focused, creative, but beyond that, creative for channels such as digital PR as that start to emerge. Beyond that, creative for on-site engagement focused content. And there are a few roles out there already. And I think that's going to crop up, and that's again becoming more prevalent in the UK. So those are the primary things. Certainly, the things that are I'm confident I'm going to be briefed on.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've seen a lot of it's still subtle at the moment, but I can see it sort of growing, is this like person who kind of becomes the gatekeeper of the brand
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
across the channels. Like the last thing you just said, I was like, that's it just brought that to mind. Someone who is like they're going to be the person responsible for maintaining that consistency across everything. So they become like a gatekeeper for everyone's like it all gets through them to make sure that
Yeah.
it's on brand, it's on message. So it can be optimized, it can be pretty, it can be whatever we need it to be. But it's gonna be so brand focused, and it's gonna tell the story we want it to tell.
Yeah, agreed. I think actually with that in mind, sorry, something I neglected to mention is that editorial lead roles are cropping up a lot more in the UK. And what these people are, they're very smart individuals that had done a great job from a copy perspective. They're basically content managers, senior copywriters, people that had a great time in the UK, US, probably Oz for a period of time. Ultimately, as things evolved and agencies were kind of moving more towards AI driven content, even with some human element, it would not require as much of a larger content team. People that have been savvy and have upskilled and have kept an eye on the current state of things are commanding pretty good salaries in editorial lead roles now. Now, these people are responsible for, exactly as you say, brand consistency across everything that goes out from an editorial perspective, on-site editorial, making sure that pretty much exactly as I mentioned earlier, is each channel is consistent. And I think good copywriters aren't necessarily enough in this market, but copywriters that cotton on to the way things are going, yeah, those roles are definitely becoming more prevalent.
So if you're an ambitious search or digital marketing professional in Australia right now, what's the smartest career move you can make in 2026?
I think growth is going to be for want of a better way of putting it, a real growth area. I think there are going to be more and more growth roles. So if you're an SEO, for example, that understands enough paid media to be able to hold your own from a conversation perspective, oversee a strategy, certainly put in the right talent, and make sure that, and I think that is where focus, because ultimately that will open you up to pretty strong directorship roles for brands, if that's the way you want it to go, SaaS businesses, as well, or agency. I think that is definitely a focus. Beyond that, though, I'm going to go back to what I've been saying throughout: is just think more commercially where you can, get involved in more commercial conversations, try and place yourself. Certainly, I guess it's that old school mentality of like trying to learn from the best person next to you, right? That sounds overly simplistic, but I think things are became pretty siloed. I think your commercials weren't necessarily talking to your channel teams and founder didn't see why they should. It's that be more inquisitive about why you're doing what you're doing, thinking outcomes, be able to start to demonstrate outcomes as well. And that's where things are going 100%.
100%. And look, death to the silos.
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
need to make a shirt for that.
Like a band.
Yes.
With heavy metal band. There you go. The entertainment for Edge of Search there.
Mate, look, if people were down, I'll do it. I'm a metal girl. I love it. All right, finally, where can people find you? Follow what you're doing, get in touch if they're hiring or looking. Like, what's the best way to connect with James?
Ultimately, you find me on LinkedIn. I think that's the best place. James Congdon. Look me up there. Any questions you've got, anything we've kind of spoken about today, you've got any requests, I'm more than happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It takes you a second, means the world for us. So please do that. And if you would like to check out what's happening for our 2026 conference, head over to edgeofsearch.com, or you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.